how, why, when, and why it must be immediate.
Educate a woman, you have educated a nation.
The outcome of our review of the same election are being finalized.
You have responsibility to serve the people. To ask how, why, when, and why it must be immediate.
Educate a woman, you have educated a nation.
The outcome of our review of the same election are being finalized.
You have responsibility to serve the people.
Hello and a warm welcome to all our viewers in Nigeria and around the world to Global Television live in Abuja, the nation's capital. I am Queen Agaba and the program is Insight Today. Labor unions, including the Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress, have begun an indefinite strike. This is coming days after the assault on the president of the NLC, Joe Ajaero, in Owerri, the Imo State capital. The Labour Congress had on the 7th resolved to declare a nationwide strike by today, November 14th, that is if their demands weren't met. Recall that the NLC president, Joe Ajaero, was attacked in Imo State while protesting alongside other Labour leaders and other members of the association. But the federal government has expressed displeasure over the Labour's decision to embark on the strike, despite a restraining order issued by the National Industrial Court. On the program, this is Insight Today. Joining me on the program to discuss this would be Dr. Babayo Sule from the Department of International Relations. We'll speak to him shortly after this break. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.
The outcome of our review of the same election are being finalized.
You have responsibility to serve the people. To ask how, why, when, and why it must be immediate.
Educate a woman, you have educated a nation.
The outcome of our review of the same election are being finalized.
You have responsibility to serve the people.
Many thanks for staying with us. The program is still Insight Today. Thank you so much, Dr. Babayo, for joining us on the program. You're welcome. Okay, Dr.
listeners
Babayo,
there.
we've been through this road countless number of times. I mean, we've seen cases where the Labour Congress have, embarked on strikes over and over again, which is well within their legitimate right as activists and fighting for the cause of humanity and welfare and workers in general. And then we see the federal government in this case, coming in and stepping in, using the courts as a mechanism to prevail the NLC to, suspend the strike. But the NLC is insisting that it is not because of the strike is not basically because of the attack on the president, Joe Ajaero, but because of other pending labor issues. And despite the restraining order from the court, the NLC has proceeded to begin with this strike, subjecting millions of Nigerians to, according to the federal government, subjecting millions of Nigerians to hardship for what is supposed to be a personal issue with the president. What do you make of this? What do you make of all of this?
Thank you very much. It is a sad and unfortunate event that in Nigeria and under democratic dispensation, the issues could not be resolved amicably between the workers' union and the government until they speak what we, the academic staff union of universities, the ASU, said the language that government always understands. That is a strike or industrial action. I don't think negotiations and counter negotiations should lead to all this. It is an issue that, yes, the government agrees that we know the daunting situation, we know the hardship, we know the level of impoverishment the workers and the Nigerian citizens are undergoing. If you are aware of all this, and the government is existing for the purpose of these citizens, and you know that the aim of the government is to, number one priority is their welfare and the progress of their lives and security, as well as progress in property, then why are you making things so difficult? Take, for example, even the 35,000 Naira palliative award. The usual treachery and deceit of the government always manifest. They said they are going to pay at the end of the month of October for that of September and October, but they only paid 1 month. They are yet to pay for the month of October, and now we are heading November. Why is it that it is always difficult for the government to make a pledge and then fulfill it timely? And when we know that that money is not something that is a bigger tax that is beyond the performance of the government. Now, coming back to the issue of labor and labor strike, we know labor union in Nigeria has been always instrumental in pursuing the welfare of both workers and non-workers in the country. In essence, to me, but for the cause of general labor movement in the first decade, the Nigerian workers and the Nigerian citizens will have been completely emasculated and totally subjugated by the ruling class. But because of always the response of the labor through protests, industrial action, negotiations, and pressure, that is always why the workers are getting some token. That's why the citizens are getting some succor. But this time around, this particular strike, I am not with the labor union. I am not in support of them. And if I can get a work in my office today, believe you me, as a worker, I will go to my office tomorrow and work. Why? Because they have overstayed their relevance and people do no longer believe in the cause or action of labor. Why will government remove subsidy from 190 Naira per liter of a petrol now up to almost 700 Naira across the country? Labor could not go into strike, could not take an action of protest. You just go and sit down with the government, wine and dine, reach a consensus of just mere miserable 35,000 Naira award and other palliatives that are impracticable and they are inconsequential. Instead of you to do the needful. And during President Jonathan in 2011, we all know the implication and the impact of Occupy Nigeria. Why is labor finding it difficult to do today? Why will you allow such an increase that will continue to even if the government will now increase salaries by 100 or 200%? The rise in the price of fuel alone will consume all that. So what is labor doing? What is the benefit for the workers? So and I don't believe it is all because of that. Because one, they didn't respond during the increase in fuel price. Electricity subsidy was removed by the government. They didn't respond. And now the palliative the government promised, it failed to pay. They didn't respond. It's only when their leader, the Labour president, was attacked in Imo, I think. That is why they are taking. That means the union is now being personalized, hijacked, and the motive of the masses-oriented movement is now being channeled and cornered toward individual and selfish leadership of the union's motives and interests. To this, I am not with them. I am not supportive of this strike. If they are really genuine and serious, let us go back to the drawing board. Let us start again all over from the issue of fuel subsidy removal. Otherwise, people will not believe in them.
Yeah, quite not far from the reactions that has trailed since the Joint Labour Congress decided to embark on this strike. You know, owing to the fact that this happened, the assault happened in Owerri, even if the Labour Congress has come out to say that this is not because of what happened to President Joe Ajaero, but because of the entire labor the entire labor force. Do you think, owning and considering the fact that this incident happened few days to the gubernatorial elections, do you think that the Labour Congress is in any way involved in partisan politics?
Well, I can't say that. I think the civil servant in Imo State have a case with the state government in terms of withholding their entitlement. So what the Labour has done is either we say wrong timing or appropriate timing. They thought that since it is an election period, and we know our politicians, we know that they can go to any extent, they can sacrifice whatever it is worth it in order to get power. They think that by taking an instant action on the eve of the election, they will be able to squeeze something out of the governor. But unfortunately for the union, what they fail to understand, the psychology and the mood of our politicians is gradually changing. They are no longer civilian rulers. They are more dictatorial than military rulers in this country now, because they no longer hit to any issue of rule of law. They no longer consider human rights. They no longer give any preference to anything that has to do with civil engagement. So therefore, that was the mistake they made, that the governor was thinking that, of course, anything that crossed on the part of his re-election ambition will be considered as enmity and a partisan politics. Maybe what Labour was trying to do is an appropriate timing in order to pressurize and squeeze the governor to do it out of his own will because of electioneering ambition. But unfortunately, it turned out he misperceived it into something. To this end, I'm happy that the strike is taking place, even though I'm not in support of it, because the genuine motive of it is not what I desire. But I'm happy it is taking place for two reasons. Number one, the excess and the extrajudicial activities and attitude of our politicians is becoming unbecoming. They have to eschew this arrogance of power that I must do whatever I wish because I have power. We as ASU, we know when we are engaging them, they used to be telling us, who are you to dare us? Who are they? They should not be dared. When they subjected themselves as servants before we, the citizens, begging for our board like Almajiris begging. And then that same person begging for your board will now come and start saying, who are you to dare me because I have power? I think they need to eschew this arrogance. We are in a democracy. If they are not ready for it, let them tell us that we are put off with democracy. We are transforming into a dictatorship, so that we should know. So therefore, that excessiveness, I think, should be checked. The governors and even the federal government should not be thinking that they are above the law, to the extent that a leader of a pressure group like NLC will just be attacked, molested, and then humiliated, and even to the extent of touching his own health, just because you feel you have power. This is just possibly impossible in a Senate line. But unfortunately, in our environment, everything is possible. For this reason, I'm happy that the strike is taking place. Let it be a lesson. Let the government, particularly the federal government and the state governors, hold the Imo State governor responsible and let him come out and apologize for this. That is one aspect. The second aspect is, I don't know whether if strike is now forbidden in the Nigerian 99 constitution, because it seems like the government from the Buhari's regime has now developed a kind of an attitude. Whenever you are going on a strike for you are all right, something that is enshrined in the law, in the constitution, something that the International Labour Organization recognized, something that is a fundamental human right, the government will rush to court to stop it. Our judges, our judiciary, please and please, don't let us down. You are the last hope of the common man. Government should not be rushing toward you to be securing outrageous verdict just in order to deter people from pursuing their right. Remember what they did to the academic staff. They decided to use a weapon of hunger. They withheld our salaries for 8 months. We say continue withholding the salaries for the next 1,000 years. Let us see whether if your hunger weapon will work. When they realize it will not work, they fail in that. They now rush to court and secure and smuggle a black market judgment, in which later during the final judgment, most of the outcomes are favorable to us and unfavorable against them. Even it is they who took us to court. So also now the court is saying NLC should not go. I'm happy that NLC ignored the court and went on it, because we cannot continue this way. You cannot continue to twist the law in order to block them, to block people from pursuing their all right and interest. I don't think it's proper. I think this democracy should be extra cautious and careful.
Dr. Babayo, don't you think that the action of the NLC could be selfish, considering that the attack happened in Owerri? Don't you think that the police should have, stepped in, or, other agencies could have stepped in to salvage the situation rather than a nationwide strike? Don't you think it poses a strain into other sectors in the country? In as much as we want the government to respond or respond to the demands of the NLC, don't you consider it? Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, you are right. You are right. This was the reason why I said in the first place I am not with this strike, this current one, because it seems to be selfish, because it is only an attempt to protect only the integrity and the office of the NLC leadership, and not the genuine motive of the masses and the workers. That is why, and as you said, they should have limited their action toward only Imo State. They should call for an indefinite strike in Imo State and not nationwide. Actually, if it is nationwide, then it should affect the entire nation, like the removal of fuel subsidy, as I mentioned, for example. And believe you me, this strike may not stretch beyond 2 working days. By tomorrow or next tomorrow, mark my word, and I also tease the audience, mark my word, it will be called off, because the government will definitely step in, will call the union leaders tonight and tomorrow, and definitely they will reach a truce, because there is no way they will allow the labor union to ground the country. But at the same time, it is good that our leaders should know that there is a body that could at least checkmate them, even if it is temporary. Otherwise, the way they are running this government, the way they are swallowing these neoliberal policies, impoverishing and always destroying national economy, crippling the entire sectors of the country because of excessive borrowing, and listening to the prescription by the neoliberal agencies in the world. If they are not being blocked, if they are not being deterred, they will ground this country to a zero. Imagine the current security situation that we are, because we face a similar situation that is not to me up to 20% of our current situation some 3 decades ago. It manifested in Boko Haram, banditry, communal clashes, IPOB, and all sorts of insecurity cutting across all regions for different purposes. What do you think will happen if the current impoverishment continues? What will happen will make just Boko Haram and banditry to look like just child play or just an introduction. Our leaders should be careful, in as much as the motive is selfish from the part of the labor leadership. Also, I think there should be a genuine movement that will stop or that will deter or counter these harmful policies that are throwing people into too much suffering. Of course, it is selfish, and I think one of the calls that I will make to the labor union is to call this strike. I'm not speaking on behalf of the government. I'm not with the government because most of their policies are not in my favor. But I'm calling them because I want to be honest. I want to be fair. I am not in support of this because it is not meant for the common man. Let them call for an independent strike in Imo State, but not nationwide. Please, this is uncalled for. honestly
you.
speaking.
Thank you very much. We'll go on a very short break, and when we return, the conversation continues. Please stay with us.
To ask how, why, when, and why it must be immediate.
Educate a woman, you have educated a nation.
The outcome of a review of the same election are being finalized.
You have responsibility to serve the people.
Many thanks for staying tuned. Before the break, we've been speaking with Dr. Babayo Sule, a lecturer from the Department of International Relations, Federal University of Gombe. Dr. Babayo, what does the NLC and the TUC's disregard for court order, what are the implications of their disregard for the court order to other sectors?
Well, honestly, it is not a good omen. The disregard for rule of law and order, when NLC as a union representing various interest groups and pressure groups across the country should always be law abiding. Ignoring the call of a law is as good as what we call a court contempt. It may lead to a situation whereby the court may even summon the leaders, and it may lead to harsh penalties. But I don't think also the court order is also justified. That is my point. In as much as I'm not supporting ignoring a law, I'm not supporting any Nigerian to violate court order because it's a contempt. I'm not also supporting what the court are doing. I'm not happy with them. They should not be ignoring fundamental human rights of Nigerians and be issuing authorized orders that they know are against the human right. In as much as they are the ones who are supposed to be forefront in terms of preventing as well as promoting fundamental human rights of Nigerians. The NLC has not done well here. It's a court contempt, and it will give, although they are taking a cue from what the government is doing. Remember, it was reported that President Buhari's government ignored court order more than 68 times during his 8 years. The court is giving order, release the Zeki, release Nandi Kanu, withdraw this, don't do that. But the government always ignored and made a court contempt. And that is the issue with leadership. If you didn't lead by example, you are now leading people with your own way. So the federal government is showing the way to the labor union to ignore it. So therefore, that is why the current government should be very careful in terms of approaching court orders. They should respect them. One of them is since the government said that IPPIS is illegal for the universities to be, they should quickly evacuate us from there in terms of following court orders, so that they should know that if they follow court order, other unions and associations and citizens will follow. And if they ignore it, they will be contempt. So the NLC, I think, should obey. But they should go and sit down with the judiciary. Let them see the implication of issuing such outrageous orders, because we will use law in order to twist any voice that will counter what we feel is not good for the country, and it's not good. So I am trying to say that there should be a balance. A balance must be struck in between. NLC should obey court order while our own fundamental human rights. So if you didn't issue the order, there will not be contempt. And if you obey, there will not be contempt. So somewhere in between, in essence, I am of the opinion that the government should devise an amicable ways of resolving matters with the unions. This strike is not good. It's not healthy. It's archaic. It's obsolete in 21st century. That anything we must go on strike in order to get. Why not sit down on a table and dialogue? It's a give and take. No one will come and say that I must have all that it takes. Hadn't it been the governor of Imo State maybe apologize? I don't think the labor union can go to that extent. What is so much about it that you cannot just simply apologize for the sake of the entire nation? One state governor, one person is now putting the entire welfare of more than 200 million Nigerians at stake because of the implications of this strike. It's not good. I think let them resolve it amicably, please.
You quite agreed that the actions of the NLC and the TUC are rather selfish to an extent, and it's not healthy, especially at this point in time, considering the challenges that we're facing as a country. What other ways would you have the NLC and trade union salvage this situation? What other means will they have as outside of embarking on a nationwide strike?
Yeah, of course, although I am not fully aware whether they have followed or they have exhausted all the other avenues. But some of the ways that I would suggest is maybe first of all, they should write. They should write their own issue and their own complaint to all the authorities concerned. And if there is no positive response, they should rewrite again for the second time. If still there is no positive response, they should rewrite for the third time. If there is no response toward that, then they should seek for a physical dialogue. If that also could not happen, then they should maybe utilize other stakeholders, like, for example, go to the National Assembly, meet the leadership of the National Assembly, the Ministry of Labor, our own royal fathers, religious fathers, leaders, all of them, engage them and let them come into it and make sure that where you are jeopardized or where you are not satisfied with what happened, let them come into it and then broker a truce. I think maybe if they follow all these avenues by now, I believe they might not have finished exhausting all of them before embarking on strike. But I think maybe they might have done some of these that I mentioned, but not all of them. So they still have a time. If all these politicians will not listen to you, including the leadership of the National Assembly, maybe you can engage or maybe you can seek the cooperation of religious leaders, traditional leaders. And if all these ones could not be listened to, why not the labor itself should go to court itself? Seek redress from the law. And where you cannot get it, that is where you will come out and address now the public via the media through you. That we have followed so ways, one by one. But all of them could not yield any positive results. So because of that, now the last option is this. This way they will get sympathy. And they should also come out and explain to us in the media what are their reasons for embarking on this strike. I didn't see any reason rather than what I said, a selfish motive, as you call it, personalization, because the leadership was affected. Otherwise, we expected them during this fuel increase, if it takes 1,000 years of strike in this country and protest to ensure that it is reversed, because we are now suffering extremely because of that. And we are feeling as if we are not Nigerians, as if we are just strangers in our own country. We cannot get any benefit from our government. And that's why we feel Labour must have done a nice job by stepping on our behalf. But they didn't do that. All that they do is just to squeeze mega miserable 35,000 naira. Even that one is unpaid. It's only the month of September. That of October, the government reneged as usual. And still the Labour has not said anything. It's now that you are calling for strike. No, I think they should explore all the avenues I mentioned, please.
Okay. So from all of the strikes that we've had, I mean the incessant strikes from the Labour Congress, what are we know that this poses a strain on the economy and all that, but what are the consequences in the long run and even in the short term?
Ask how, why, when, and why it must be immediate.
educate a woman, you have educated a nation.
The outcome of a review of the same election are being finalized.
You have responsibility to serve the people. To ask how, why, when, and why it must be immediate.
Educate a woman, you have educated a nation.
The outcome of a review of the same election are being finalized.
You have responsibility to serve the people. To ask how, why, when, and why it must be immediate.
Educate a woman, you have educated a nation.
The outcome of a review of the same election are being finalized.
You have responsibility to serve the people. To ask how, why, when, and why it must be immediate.
Educate a woman, you have educated a nation.
The outcome of a review of the same election are being finalized.
You have responsibility to serve the people.
Many thanks for staying with us. We do sincerely apologize for that downtown and network glitch. Before the timeout, we've been speaking with Dr. Babayo Sule from the Department of International Relations, Federal University of Gombe. And we have been talking about the actions of the NLC. I mean, reactions that have trailed, expected that the NLC would have, is probably not going on strike at the appropriate time. Their timing is wrong. I mean, we expected the NLC to have gone on strike during the removal of fuel subsidy. And even when we had cases of the Senate spending exorbitant amount of money buying cars, I think over 160 million naira on cars. Dr. Babayo, I'm also aware that the labor has an arm, because what happened between comrade, the Labour president, Joe Ajaro, is a bit personal. What is the economic consequence of this nationwide strike for the country? Because I'm aware that the Labour, there's an arm of the Labour that should be able to deal with this issue. So why do we have to embark on a nationwide strike, and what are the consequences? Because as of today, we heard that the power holding company has also embarked on a strike. So what are the other consequences? And how should these have been properly, dealt with?
Well, thank you very much. I think, as you reiterated, it is pertinent as a nation to understand that as we are progressing, we need to develop a culture of dialogue, a culture of resolving conflict amicably. There is no way we can live without a conflict. Be a conflict between an employer and an employee, between a husband and a wife, between one area and another area, between one religion and another, between one ethnic group and another. But the most important thing is the ability to manage the conflict politely without allowing it to escalate into a violence. So it's just a good example of the labor union and its relationship with the government. There will always be conflict. Labor will be always demanding for an increased pay, increased allowances, so that the workers will survive and work. The government will always continue to insist that there is no money to do that, no money to do that, meaning that they will always be in conflict. But the most important thing is that let them sit down on a table, dialogue, understand each other, and agree. The implication is that before tomorrow, in less than 48 hours, you will hear the government recording a loss of billions of naira, not millions, billions. Because, for example, there are many revenue generating agencies that are raking in billions of naira to the government are no longer working today. Like, for example, let's say CBN, FIRS, NPA, and NIMASA, NCC. We can go on, as even though some of them might not be fully in the strike, but still, no matter how partial it is, it will affect the government. It will lose billions of naira. So in this situation where already the government is crying of falling revenue, and where we are always lamenting of the current economic situation, the way it is biting harder. If the government can afford to lose more billions in the process, that means the entire country will lose, because other entitlement that the government is supposed to do in terms of educational delivery or healthcare services or release of salaries and pensions and allowances may be affected, because the shortfall in that what the government lost will now reflect in the entitlement of the citizens of the country. So therefore, as we said, that arm that is responsible for an amicable resolution of matters or conflict with the employer should have been activated to exploit all the avenues that I had mentioned earlier, so that
Okay, many thanks for staying with us. I believe we still have Dr. Babayo on the line. Okay, Dr. Babayo, Ajero has been accused of being partisan. They say he's a card-carrying member of the APC. So how does this impact, the credibility of whatever the Labour Party, the Labour Congress, I beg your pardon, is pursuing?
Well, actually, it is allowed by the law of this country to belong to any party. In fact, it is even insensitivity not to belong to any party as a bona fide citizen of this country and as an enlightened one. You should belong to any party of your choice, but the issue is you should be able to detach emotion, you should be able to detach sentiment, you should be able to detach yourself as a labor union representing all umbrella unions from your own party. When you go to your own personal party activities, you can do this, and you can even go out for a campaign as a labor union for your candidate. This one is allowed. But when it comes to union activities, then this should be only restricted to the activities of the union without exhibiting or demonstrating any lean toward any party or toward any partisanship. Of course, our politicians, sometimes they can paint you white or black or green or yellow or even red or indigo, whatever they feel like. No matter what he did, they will still partisan politician. They all call all of us this way, the way they like. So this one is not a big deal. The most important thing is if he is able to discharge his leadership responsibility without allowing his own partisanship to intervene and affect the entire labor union. That is the most important thing. Secondly is if the entire motive behind the labor movement and other activities and action that the union will take is in favor of Nigerians and workers, then this one, there is no problem with his own affiliation in terms of political party. But where he is doing it for his own personal self, or where he allows where he allows the interest of his own party to meddle into the affairs of the labor organization, that is where he is at fault, and that's where you can accuse him.
Many thanks, Dr. Babayo, for your time with us on Insights today. Well, that's how much we can take on the program. Please follow us on all social media platforms at Global TV NG and other handles now showing on your screen. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good day.
To ask how, why, when, and why it must be immediate.
Educate a woman, you have educated a nation.
The outcome of a review of the same election are being finalized.
You have responsibility to serve the people.